Chapter 18. Jim Pooley lays in the Le Corbusier. Dom Perignon lays in Jim Pooley. It's a curious thing how the simple transfer of a body of liquid from one location to another can alter so many things, or at least appear to. The furtive, worried Pooley of the hour past had now vanished, to be replaced by a mellow crisis. What crisis? God is in his heaven and all's right with the world kind of body. Jim tinkered with the remote controller and the 25-inch screen of a re-routed television set filled with Sergio Leone's classic western for a few dollars more. Jim greatly preferred the video, which he'd viewed on many previous occasions, with the sound on, but he had never achieved full mastery of the controller and did not feel up to making the stroll over for a manual turn-up. "It's not a bad old life." Jim shifted his roll up to the corner of his mouth. "I really cannot see what all the fuss is about," he informed the silent set, as the man with no name drew upon Red Baby Kavanagh and sent the outlaw to a $2,000 grave. Old Pete rose unsteadily to address the assorted assembly. "My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, my honoured guests, friends, Romans, and countrymen." His cronies enjoined in hearty hand claps. Jennifer Naylor chewed upon her lower lip. The mayor said nothing. "Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking." Beneath the table, young Chips gnawed upon a chicken leg and broke wind meaningfully. "I should just like to offer a word of thanks to all those who have made this evening possible, and to say that, on behalf of myself and the senior citizens of Brentford, how very much we have enjoyed this splendid repast, and how very much we look forward to the brandy and cigars, which must now bring it to a successful conclusion." Old Pete reseated himself amidst tumultuous geriatric applause, a line or two of Tipperary, and a further barrage of flatulence from his dog. "Oh, thank you." Jennifer Naylor stood up. This single action playing havoc with 24 formerly defunct libidos and putting as many pacemakers under considerable strain. A whistle of feedback, as the ancients turned their deaf aids up full volume, piped her aboard. "My Lord Mayor, government ministers, ladies and gentlemen." She paused and nodded towards the old contemptibles. "Members of the Olympic Committee." A score of turtlenecks inclined in response to this unexpected elevation in status. "Today is a day that shall be writ big in the annals of Brentford. For today, official confirmation has been made that we are indeed to host the upcoming Olympiad." She put up a hand to subdue the applause that wasn't coming anywhere. "It is my great pleasure to hand you over to our honoured guest, His Worship, the Mayor, to give the speech of acceptance." She primly reseated herself. The honoured guest rose to the occasion, arranged a sheaf of papers before him on the table, and his reading glasses upon his nose. He smiled down the expanse of table towards the rows of ancient faces, which regarded him with but a single expression. It was not one of solicitude. "Dear friends," he began, "my dear, dear friends." John Omally finished his pint and looked up towards the battered Guinness clock. Nearly 11 o'clock. Neville was calling last orders and Pooley was nowhere to be seen. This was not how he had planned things at all. In a perfect world, Pooley would have been there an hour ago, leaving their drinks unfinished. The two of them would have slipped away from the Swan, picked up the explosive from the allotment, set the charges on the barge, and been back in time to finish their pints and comment upon the possible causes of the loud explosion coming from the direction of the river. Surrounded by friends, they might have even taken a stroll down to see what all the hullabaloo was about. But this was not a perfect world, and Jim Pooley was nowhere to be seen. O'Malley slid his empty glass across the bar counter. What was the lad up to? What had become of him? A sudden grim expression forced its way across John's normally cheerful countenance. Jim had done a runner. Pooley ran the video forward to the chiming watch gunfight sequence at the end, his favourite bit. Without the sound, however, the tension lost much of its impact. Jim rose unsteadily and rooted about amongst the rack of videotapes. He had some crackers here, and no mistake. They saved Hitler's brain. Plan 9 from outer space. Mars needs women. Every one a classic. You couldn't blow these up. There had to be another way. Pooley almost scratched at his head. It was a close thing. Perhaps we can refloat the barge, he said drunkenly. Drift downstream for a bit. That'd be the business. He rattled the neck of the champagne bottle into a Georgian rummer. Empty. Time for a top-up, said the lad, swaying over to the cocktail cabinet. No, eeny, meeny, miny. There was a wide range of drinks on offer, but most were of the brought home from holiday because we like the colour variety, which seemed a good idea at the time when drunk, but inevitably led to severe brain damage the next morning. Banana liqueur, said Jim. That seems like a good idea. Twisting away a plastic stopper the shape of Carmen Miranda's hat, he decanted a large slug of the yellow liquid into his glass. Anchors away, said Jim. There was a loud thump upon the hull of the barge. Pooley stiffened. John? Already? He hiccuped foolishly. You'll have to hang on a minute, he giggled. I've not quite got everything here. There was another thump and the sound of something metallic being drawn down the side of the barge. Now what's he up to? Queried Jim. Setting the charges, you buffoon, he answered himself. So get a move on. Pooley took a hasty look around. Most of it was out of focus, and none of it really seemed to matter much. He took a deep, unsteady breath. He'd be a millionaire soon. Who cared about a barge load of booty? This was a new beginning, a new, honest beginning. He stumbled over to a nearby porthole and drew aside the blinds, peering out. Pooley found himself staring directly into the face of death itself. The face was big and bloated, hideously swollen, a mass of folds and pouches. The skin looked dead and white, the skin of a corpse. But the eyes were alive, round and black with white pupils. Jim drew back in horror and then in anger. It was the head of a scarecrow, or some such. John was winding him up, and him with a weak heart and everything. And then the eyes blinked, the horrible eyes blinked, and a mouth like a gash amongst the folds and flaps of skin opened. It opened to reveal a hideous maw, a gaping black cavern devoid of teeth and gums, and a sound, a voice, a cry. Jim thrust back the blind and lurched back in terror. Turning to make his getaway, caught his foot in the TV cable, wrenched the improvised socket from the wall, fused the lights, plunged the salon into darkness, tripped, fell, struck his head on the cocktail cabinet, and knocked himself unconscious. John Omally climbed down through the open hatchway, clutching a bulging holdall, and peered into the darkness. He flicked the light switch. "Damn it," said he. "Jim, are you in here?" All was silent, except for the gentle lap of water against the hull. Even the plopping salmon had turned in for the night. "Jim!" There was no reply. Pooley had evidently done a runner. "Poltroon," muttered Omally. "I should have words to say to that lad when I catch up with him. Banjos the electrics, leave the door open to all and sundry." He stood up in the hatchway and placed a holdall upon the deck before him. He didn't need much light for this. It was all down to a single flick of a switch to set the 5-minute egg timer, the work of but a moment. Omally unzipped the holdall, flipped the switch, re-zipped the holdall, and received a violent blow to the forehead which sent him tumbling backwards into the blackness of the salon. "What the? Who?" Omally sprawled in the dark, cursing and spitting oaths. He drew a deep breath and prepared to come up fighting. The lozenge of moonlight visible through the open hatchway was momentarily blotted out as a dark shape dropped down into the barge after him. "Who is this?" John demanded. "What's your game?" Something bowled across the floor and struck him in the shins with a sickening crack. Omally screamed in anguish and not a little fury, and doubled up, clutching his legs. He fell in an untidy heap on the top of an unconscious Jim Pooley. What's going on here?" mumbled a bleary, drunken voice. "Pooley, is that you?" "John, get off there." This was the second time in one day that Jim had woken up to find a man on top of him. "John, unhand me. My God, I've gone blind." "Shut up, man." What's going on? Get off me, I say." "Pooley, be quiet." Omally sought to stifle Jim's cries with one hand while seeking out his lighter with the other. "There's someone in here." John felt Pooley shudder. The terrible memory of whatever he'd seen through the porthole suddenly resobered his drunken brain. "John, there's a thing. A moth." "Shut up!" Omally struck fire to his Zippo and held it above him. Pooley did what he could to focus his eyes. "You've got a nosebleed," he observed. "And I'll not be the only one." Omally addressed his unseen assailant. "Fight like a man! Come out!" The slim flame burned and fluttered. The shadows danced. Within the cocoon of light, Omally helped his companion to his feet, wincing at the pain of his own battered legs. "Come on out, you coward! Show yourself!" There was a sudden rush of movement. Something leapt before them, leapt up. Omally held high his lighter and ducked away as it loomed above them. A terrific figure, gross, unnatural. It clung impossibly upside down upon the ceiling. Pooley stood frozen with horror. John thrust him out of the way and dived for cover as the thing scuttled across the ceiling like a great black beetle and vanished through the open hatchway. And the moonlight vanished with it as the hatch swung shut with an almighty crash. John leapt to his feet in the darkness and flung himself towards the hatchway. Above him the bolt slid home, the padlock clicked. They were trapped. Omally beat at the hatch. "Let us out!" he yelled. "Let us out!" Pooley's voice came from the darkness. "Don't do that, John. It's on the outside, and we're on the in. For God's sake, at least we're safe." "Safe!" O'Malley's voice rose to a pitch that was new to Jim's hearing. "Jim, you damned fool! I armed the bomb. It's out there. We got about 2 minutes left, and then—" "Let us out!" screamed John at the top of his voice. "Let us out! Light! We must get some light!" O'Malley floundered about in the salon. "Where's the torch? Where's anything?" Unseen even to himself, Jim's hands began to flap. "Don't do it," warned O'Malley. "Where's the torch? Where is it?" "On the hook! On the hook!" "Where's the hook?" "By the door." "Where's the door?" "Over there." "Oh, is it over?" "It's here." O'Malley flicked on the torch. It actually worked. He shone it into the idiot face of Jim Pooley. "Help," said Jim in a small, foolish voice. "Help. There must be some way out. If the hatch is locked, we can't exactly squeeze through a porthole." The torchlight glanced off a glass panel in the floor. "The fish pens," said O'Malley. "Oh," said Jim. "I forgot to open them." "It doesn't matter. It's the only way out. Come on." "We'll drown." "We won't." O'Malley tore up the glass panel trapdoor that covered the fish pens and jumped down into the water. It was very cold and very black and sadly lacking in promise. Between his wounded knees, a great trout moved ominously. "Come on, Jim. We can punch our way through the wire netting and swim out underneath." "We'll drown." "Come on!" O'Malley shone the torch up at Jim, grabbed him by the ankle and dragged him down into the water. "The fish will eat us. Get going. There's no time left. Take a deep breath now." Jim had time to take about half of one before O'Malley thrust his head under the water and propelled him forwards through the wire netting of the fish pen wall. All about him the great fish plunged, as eager as he for freedom. Jim was only beneath the surface for a few brief seconds, but his past life flashed before him several times nevertheless. Then, with a great gasp, he broke water, 10 or so feet out from the barge. He coughed and spluttered and spat out Thames. Above him came sudden movement, sound. Jim turned his terrified eyes towards the barge. On deck, ghastly beneath the moonlight, the thing paced to and fro. It looked almost like a man, yet it walked upon all fours. Its head pivoted about as it sighted Pooley, and a low howl escaped from its black throat. Jim floundered in the water. The undercurrent was strong, and he was no swimmer. He was rapidly being dragged downstream and down generally. "John! Help, John!" Pooley's voice faded as the blackness of the river engulfed him. And then a deafening explosion tore the Brentford night into a million fragments. A great torrent of flame mushroomed up from the ancient barge, billowing into the sky. Shards of burning splinters rained down upon the river and the surrounding area. And amidst the maelstrom of fire and tearing fury, something perished that was neither man nor beast, gave vent to a shriek of fury and defiance, and became no more. What had been for most denizens of Brentford a night of jollity and celebration was suddenly a chaos of ambulances, police cars and fire engines. Bells jangled, sirens screamed, beacons flashed. The town hall disgorged a band of martial pensioners wielding wine bottles and walking sticks. Neville buried his face in his hands as the pub cleared for the second time in one day. So much for the takeaway toasties, he thought. It was some time before the fire brigade were able to batten down enough corrugated iron fencing to gain entry and bring the raging inferno under control. By the time they had accomplished this, the headquarters of the P&O line was nothing but a blackened shell. It was some time later still that Inspector Horvis arrived on the scene. He addressed his inquiries to the leading fireman. "God alone knows," that man replied. "Chemicals is my guess. There's any amount of the stuff lying around here. All this should have been knocked down years ago. A build-up of gases in the barge is my bet, although it could be any of a number of things. We'll give it a thorough going over in the morning, when it's all cooled down a bit." Horvis drew snuff from his can and pinched it meaningfully to his nose.